Hello there and welcome. So it's now dark and we're going to go out for a ride and have a look at some aspects of night riding that may be of interest to you. So love it or hate it, riding at night is something that you may have to do at some point. I used to do a lot of riding at night when I first started riding. It was my only form of transport when I was in my teens and I first started out. And I used to enjoy riding on a lot of the country roads at night time and having a good look around, and it was fine, and I used to ride in all sorts of different weather conditions. But of course, riding at night does come with extra risks, and we need to be aware of what they are and how we can minimise the risk to us just because it's dark. So it's always good to have good kit on when you're night riding. Very often reflective materials can be helpful and highlight you a little bit more. Now you don't tend to get seen very well when you're waiting at a junction side on, so reflective stripes that come with a lot of motorcycle equipment these days as standard are quite useful. And if you want to enhance your visibility more, you can get additional equipment with stripes on that reflect. I like the kit that has stripes on the sleeves because they tend to create a much larger image than sleeveless tops. Some motorcycles have little reflectors on them other than the legally required rear red reflector. Some will have little orangey amber reflectors on the front forks, and some people also put reflective tape on their vehicles so that they can make things look a little bit more obvious. Now I know that won't suit everybody. One of my motorcycles, this one I'm riding now, this has got a bit more reflective tape on it than a standard motorcycle. It's my winter bike, and if I ever train in the darkness, I think it's quite useful to have that. So before you go out, make sure all your lights are as clean as they can absolutely be. You want to maximise your visibility to be seen by other road users, and also for you to be able to see the road. Because whilst it goes without saying, in the darkness you can't see as much as during the day, and of course that has major implications on your safety, because you might not see hazards that you would see in the daylight, or you might see them a lot later than you would ordinarily. And that in its own right means you just need to slow down, generally speaking. Night riding can put extra stresses and strains on your eyes, and you can get a little bit more tired, especially for those of us who are a little bit older than the youngsters. I remember years ago as a youngster not really worrying about anything. As I get older, I have to consider a lot more things, and you do get a little bit tired in the eye if you're riding extensively at night. And so to that end, visors should be as clean and clear as possible and unscratched. So if you've got old scratched up visors and you can't see, replace it. What you don't want is oncoming lights hitting your visor and creating that horrible starburst effect, because that's really going to spoil your visibility. Now I know that some people have tinted visors, some legal tinted visors that are E-marked, and some people do wear visors that are not E-marked, which technically are illegal because of the amount of light that they transmit, or don't transmit if you like. Don't wear visors like that at night. They don't help your visibility at all. I mean, at the moment, because I've got this screen and I wear normal glasses, I'm actually riding at these lower speeds with my visor open. You've always got the risk of getting a moth or something like that in your face. You know, the more layers that you look through, the more potential you have for distortion. Now a lot of motorcycle helmets come with pinlock visors, like a layer of double glazing in the visor, and they're great because they stop things from steaming up. However, at night I have noticed that you sometimes can get a very slight double image, and I have seen some of those pinlock visors marked for daytime use only, so just be aware of that. I've also found that pinlock visors tend to deteriorate somewhat with age, and you don't notice it because it's a very, very gradual process. It's only when you take them out and look through them and at the visor and you think, cool, that's really clear. You put the pin lock back in and you realise it's starting to lose that clarity. So good vision is absolutely everything at night. I recently did an overtake video showing a chap in a BMW doing a pretty old dodgy overtake at night. Yet again, you know, you're not going to be able to see the limit point of bends so easily. You can't see the hazards ahead so easily. And while some people say, oh, I can see vehicles coming because you see the headlights early, whilst that's true up to a point, you might not see a pedal cycle that is not lit or poorly lit. You might not see pedestrians. So you can't rely on that to help you out. You've still got to expect the worst case scenario. So on these country roads, we need to be aware that animals, a warning of horses there, well, you probably won't get a horse being ridden this time of night, although it's not impossible. But foxes, badgers are something that you might see on the roads. And from experience, you don't want to be hitting one, because they'll do a lot of mischief. Badgers are tough old beasts. I remember one of my cars years ago had the unfortunate contact with a badger and it did a lot of damage to him. So on a motorcycle that's going to be a lot worse. So yet again, we're just keeping speed down so that we've got time to assess and deal with things. This road's pretty poor condition, and so I'm having to look quite carefully at the road surface, and in places it is wet and damp. And it's a good job it's not raining as well, because if it rains at night, that seriously affects your visibility and you get a lot more glare. We always talk about always be able to stop in the distance that you can see to be clear safely on your side of the road. Well, that still applies at night. So there's absolutely no point in tearing around and not being able to see. So at the moment I'm travelling on a dipped beam. In fact, I'm going to turn my auxiliary lights off. That's a standard dip beam for my motorcycle, and you can see, possibly, depending on the camera, it's not great. Now if I'm going to pop up to high beam, you can see the blue light come up on the dashboard there. That's what we really want, so that we can see the road ahead in much more clarity. Oncoming vehicles, so we'll just drop that dip beam down so we don't dazzle them. It's an offence to dazzle other road users, and it's dangerous for you as well. Because what it means is if your lights are up high and bright, that oncoming vehicle is dazzled and his night vision is ruined or damaged temporarily and he can't see as well. So I'm going to put some auxiliary lights on here, and they're quite useful on country lanes. They just give that extra bit of illumination on the road on this motorcycle, and they are set so that they are not dazzling other road users at night. Now we've got a whole range of auxiliary lights available to us now. LEDs mainly. Used to use the halogen bulbs. LEDs are fantastic lighting, as we know. They're very, very bright. Some of them have got a very blue-white light, and they're very, very good for seeing. Unfortunately, if they're poorly set, they're also very, very good for dazzling people. It's probably one of the reasons why you cannot just put an LED bulb in an existing halogen unit on a car or a motorcycle legally, because they're not actually approved, and many of them don't have the correct distribution of light. So if you're noticed out on the road these days, and I think it's been spoken about quite a lot, dazzling is becoming something that's a bit of an epidemic, if you like, in modern road use at night. And that's because these LED lights are so poor in the way that they shine their light. It's just going all over the place, and it's quite unpleasant, and it's dangerous as well. So whilst we appreciate we all want brighter lights and we all want to be able to see more and more, do consider the effects you're having on other road users and the overall implication of the safety issues. A lot of these LED bulbs are not really fit for purpose. Apart from the fact they're illegal, that's not really the main point here. The main point is they're dangerous because they dazzle people, and you don't want to be losing your vision. So with that in mind, how do you not lose your night vision? So I can't remember the exact time, but I was told years ago it's about 10 to 15 minutes for your eyes to fully acclimatise to complete darkness. So that's quite some time, and then when you start bringing extra light onto them, you spoil that. They sort of revert back a little bit, and I'm sure you know, if you've ever looked into a bright light, you see a little image that sort of ghosts there for quite some time. So we need to keep our eyes well up that road, and we need to look well ahead like we do in the daytime. Good observations, good scanning. However, don't look directly at the headlights of the oncoming vehicles, because that will play havoc with your eyes and your night vision. So look beyond the vehicle, look down towards the road a little bit, but not right in front of you. You need to be looking up the road. Use the curb to help you, the curb line, the white lines. These are all useful things that you can do. Direct vision into a headlight is extremely unhelpful. And when we're following vehicles as well, brake lights can be quite bright, especially some of the new modern lights, or in the case of this vehicle in front who seems to have some sort of issue with his lighting, showing a white light to the rear. That's not very helpful either. So we can just see those brake lights coming on. He's definitely got some lighting issues on this car. So I'm just going to keep a little bit further away as well, as I do in the daytime of course. But because I'm not very, very close to him, I don't get dazzled quite as much as if I was closer. When following traffic at night as well, try not to get too close to the vehicle in front. It's very easy with the height of the motorcycle headlight to sort of shine and bounce around a little bit in the rear view mirror of the vehicle in front, and it can be quite distracting for drivers or quite annoying. So just keep your distance as we've recommended anyway, and be aware that that light can be a problem. Mirrors should be nice and clean, just like your lights, so that our rear observations can be effective and we can see what's going on. But what we need to be aware of is when we go from a very well lit area into a darker area, it takes time for the eyes to adjust. So when you go between those areas, just be careful with your speed. You don't want to be going into an area that's almost blind and you're into a bend or a hazard and you can't actually see what's happening on the road. So we're going to head a little bit more into the city now, into the more urban area. Now it's fairly quiet this evening, we're about 7:15 on a Sunday, so we've not got heavy amounts of traffic. But a lot of night riding, especially in the winter, is done in rush hour time and there's lots of cars about. Just remember that on a motorcycle you do not get seen as easily as a four-wheel vehicle. And we're very used, and car drivers are very used to looking at the distance of headlights and working out the speed and the distance of oncoming vehicles. Well, judging speed and distance at night is a lot more difficult than it is in the daytime. And some motorcycles with auxiliary lights, two round lights on them, or some motorcycles that have two lights close together as a manufacturer's standard, can sometimes create drivers to think it's a car a long way off. Just bear that in mind when you're riding around with your bike. Think about your lighting, think about how it might appear to other road users and how they may misjudge you. Not saying that they will, but it's good to consider it. The other thing is that when road users are looking at you, looking at the traffic coming towards, it's very easy for your light to get lost in what we call a sea of other headlights. So there's lots of lights behind you, you're a very narrow vehicle, people just think you are part of a car. They don't realise that you're a vehicle there in your own right. And so if they look at that car, they judge the speed and distance of that car when trying to come out of a junction, for example. They may well not see you, disregard you, and then you'll find that vehicles are pulling out in front of you. And that will very much be the case if you're travelling at speeds that are inappropriate. So unfortunately we do see quite a lot of cyclists now without any lights at all. And although that the lit area here showed him up in his light jacket fairly reasonably, the vision doesn't look so good in the mirror from behind. And pedestrians in dark clothing, cyclists in dark clothing, they're putting themselves massively at risk. The problem is, if you collide with them, the damage to you is going to be pretty awful as well. Motorcyclists rarely come off very well in any situation. So when you are going to come up to roundabouts and junctions, areas where it's particularly dodgy coming in contact with other road users, just allow yourself a little bit more time, a little bit grace to assess what's going on. It's like here, as I come into the roundabout, check the mirrors nice and early, considering a brake light. Actually, tonight there's absolutely no one behind me. Looking across, I mean, this roundabout's lovely and clear, which is good. It can be very, very different story in rush hour on a very wet evening, or first thing in the morning when it's still dark. Generally, people's reactions are a lot slower in the morning. First thing, they just got up, might still be feeling a bit tired, not quite with it, and that can be a very dodgy time to ride a motorcycle in the dark as well. So as we've said, the visor's been up for a while now, and I'm quite comfortable on this bike at these speeds having the visor open. I don't think I'd be so keen if the temperature was a lot lower, it was a lot windier, or it was raining hard. The problem with raining hard is that it does affect your vision, and while scratch visors do disperse light in a very unpleasant way, they also stop the rain running off so well. So a nice unscratched visor helps water dissipate, and there are various things you can put on visors that can help water run away and move a lot easier, and it's worth considering that. I think some gloves used to come with like a little windscreen wiper rubber on the finger as well, and they could be quite helpful. So as we leave the lit area into the darkness, just a moment for the eyes to adjust. And you can see on this road here there are no road studs at all. There we are, complete darkness. So we just pop that headlight up onto main beam again. And just see a road sign down there, and you can see some of the road studs have been used on the road here. So it's a little bit intermittent with the way that they've designed the road and put the furniture on. It's another reason why speed is a big consideration at night. Now notice how you get the red studs there. They give you a little bit of clue as to where the edge of the road is, and then we've got the amber studs there as well. So colours of road studs are important to know as well, because they really assist you at night. So as we approach this dual carriageway, we can expect to see red studs to our left, white studs for the centre, and amber studs marking the outside lane of the carriageway, the central reservation. You can see the double reds here nice and clearly, and the greens showing us that we can enter the dual carriageway. So green road studs mark laybys, as you can see here on the left. They mark the entrance and exit to dual carriageways. The red studs, as you would expect, mark the edge of the carriageway to the near side, and the amber studs mark the central reservation. They're pretty clear along here, but they're not clear on all dual carriageways. Motorways are the same, and they give you good guidance as to where the road actually goes. So we're going to leave the carriageway in about a third of a mile. We've just got the countdown marker, so I'll use the road studs to help me negotiate where I'm going to go. I can just see the greens coming into view, and I can see the reds on the other side, so they tell me where my road is. Notice the gap in the studs showing where the arrow is painted. So you can see here with the solid white line system, the road studs quite close together. And that's how you'll know it's a solid white, even if you couldn't see the white line easily. Road studs just giving you that information. So when we're out on these rural roads, we tend to lose a lot when it comes to road markings, reflective studs, reflective lines, etc. What you see is what you get. So it's probably very wise never just see something going across the field there. Hare or a rabbit or something. The road can look very, very different at night. And good lighting's important. If you do a lot of country lanes, having auxiliary lights are really, really useful. The lights I've got on this bike are fair. I've seen better. I've seen some really good auxiliary lights that make things look like daylight. My mate's got some fantastic lights on his GS. They really do help. But I'd say, you know, this is very reasonable. I can see quite nicely. You know, one mistake that you often see made is people come up to giveaway junctions or uncontrolled junctions. I mean, that's technically a giveaway, but you can't really see the road markings that well on there. Very, very faint for years. And I think because it's night time, they don't have to give way, they don't have to look too hard, they just sort of get on with it. You do be careful about that though, there might be something there that you can't see. You know, at night it's very difficult to see some of these road junctions until the last minute. Some of them out in the sticks, out in the rural, they're very faint paint, they've really worn, they've not been replaced by the council. Look for the clues and just keep your eyes absolutely peeled. You need so much attention when you're riding at night, like you do in the day of course. You know, can I stop in the distance so I can see to be clear? Quite useful how the high beam picks up on the telegraph poles along here, and that's quite good for us. It gives us good guidance, but always be aware that whilst telegraph poles will usually follow the road, it doesn't mean that they always absolutely will, so don't rely on it 100%, use it as a guide. Just diverting my eyes down towards that near side curb there with the oncoming vehicle. As we go into the bend, can't see a lot of the road surface, so a little bit of caution because it was wet, was a little bit broken up. So one area we need to look at as well, which I know has caused problems for bikers over the years on and off, is parked cars at night, or skips. Now it's not too bad when the cars are parked nicely facing the correct direction because you've got the rear reflectors, but when a car is parking towards you there are no reflectors. And in the lit area, probably not the end of the world. However, in an unlit area you've got an obstruction in your carriageway that you won't be able to see easily. And there have been cases over the years where motorcyclists have unfortunately smashed into parked cars or skips that have been put on the highway, with disastrous consequences. So with that in mind, observational skills, awareness, appropriate levels of speed, aware of what might be around a blind left-hand bend, they're all important parts of your riding skills. Great example, isn't it, the back of that ambulance, how reflective markings just make vehicles so much more obvious. The arguments for wearing reflective or having reflectives on your motorbike are probably very similar to the arguments we hear about wearing high-vis jackets during the day. I know there's lots of schools of thoughts about that, and I won't get into it now. Always creates a very interesting discussion amongst experienced bikers. So I always try and get my main beam up as quickly as I can once I've got those oncoming vehicles past me, but not too early so that I dazzle the driver. But of course, you know, with the lights coming towards you, you are essentially going into darkness, complete darkness, because the lights are creating that extra field, if you like, that sort of stops you seeing well up that road. It's like here, trying to negotiate the bend and assess the severity. It says slow, and we can see the headlights of that oncoming car, and we can see the angle of the oncoming car. So angles of headlights can sometimes give us a little bit of clues about how tight the bend is, because I can't easily on this bend see the limit point of vision. It's so dark I can't really see where the left and the right curbs meet. Not easily, just about, but it's a bit of a haze of darkness. So you require just that little bit of extra caution, really. So as I say, I'm just keeping my finger on that high beam switch so I can just drop it down to dip beam as soon as I see another vehicle, and then when I'm happy that they've gone, I can just pop it straight up. So I hope the video's been useful, just to give you a few little hints and tips for riding at night. Basically, make sure your lights are clean, your visors are clean, you've got optimal visibility, you moderate your speed, make sure you can still stop in a distance you can see to be clear, keep it smooth, don't stare at headlights, just take your time. Love it or hate it, it's very, very manageable, and it can be quite enjoyable as well. So until next time, ride safe and take care.